This has been a 3-day program, and today is the second day. It's being attended by more than 500 academicians and bureaucrats from across the country. We had a host of academicians and bureaucrats speaking at the inaugural session yesterday, and we have been having a series of panel discussions which are discussing on different aspects of the future course of education, especially in a post pandemic world, how technology is impacting that education, and how general course of direction we are taking. So, we have the panel discussion now on new skills for the new world order. And it's my pleasure to just introduce the panelists for this discussion. We have Professor Dr. Praful Kumar Udani, Director General, CVM University. Welcome, Dr. Udani.
Yes,
Uh, we have Dr. B. Sandil Kumar, Dean and Director, Health Sciences, Vinayaka Mission Research Foundation, Dean to University. Welcome, Dr. Sandil Kumar.
thank you.
We have Pankaj Jain. He is Regional Director, Indian Subcontinent for the University of Sydney Technology and College in Sydney, Australia. Welcome, Mr. Jain. And we have another panelist just getting a slightly delayed. He will be joining in between. Dr. Balakrishna Shetty is the Vice Chancellor of Sri Siddharth University in Tumkur. And to moderate the panel discussion today, we have Dr. Abhay Kumar, the Vice Chancellor of Pratap University, who will be moderating the discussion. So, without further ado, I would like to hand over the baton now to Dr. Abhay Kumar to take over the discussion, and I'm sure we will get to learn a lot of new facets and new skills for New World Order. Thank you. Over to you,
Yeah,
Dr. Kumar.
thank you, Mr. Rajneesh. It has been a pleasure to be associated with APEC, which has been organizing such webinars with such distinguished celebrities. And I'm fortunate to be moderating the session because it would be a great learning for me as well. So, Mr. Pankaj, Professor Udani, Dr. Sendil Kumar, and maybe another Vice Chancellor joining us very soon. So, in fact, we see that the world after coronavirus will never be the same. Just to begin with, the expectations, say, of employees and organizations are undergoing considerable change as we navigate through a period which no one has experienced before. Moreover, I would like to say that the world of work is also changing. According to the World Economic Forum, for example, 65% of the students entering higher education today will be employed in jobs that do not yet exist. At the same time, many jobs which exist today will become, say, automated by artificial intelligence in the future. There are so many things we can talk about. But what are the new skills which are meant for a new world order? We hear talking about a new normal, for example, but a new world order goes much beyond a new normal. That means it contains geopolitical context, it contains economic context. There's so many things globally which a new world order would emphasize upon and denote. So, in order to begin with, I'll begin with, for example, Mr. Pankaj Jain, who is who is from UTS College, Sydney, Australia. He's the regional director, India subcontinent for UTS College, Sydney, Australia. Mr. Pankaj, I would like to pose a query before you in the context that what do you expect a new world order to be, and what are the basic skills which you think students should possess, especially before going to college or university? Yeah, Mr. Pankaj, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Tell me, sir.
Right, sir. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I have some slides which I thought I prepared. So I will ask Prabhakar to just run the slides. So thank you, Abhay sir, for starting the session and giving a context to it. As you very well said that things have changed, new orders have changed, jobs have changed. So these are tough times for all of us, and we have to adapt to new skills, new technology, new soft skills as well as hard skills. So we're just waiting for Prabhakar to start some slides. Yes. So basically, like the first slide was the inaugural slide, and this is like what is happening in the world these days. Trends are changing, so people are glued to TV, glued to mobiles, glued to serials and everything. So technology has changed a lot of parameters. So I thought I'll start the session with that. So that technology has come into our build because I was hearing the previous session also, and that was about admissions in universities in India. So technology was adapted or forced to adapt by teachers and students also. So that has changed the trend now. So there are two types of skills which I think are there, and if you can have the next slide. So this is just to give you a context of what technology has been happening and what have you changed. So there are two types of skills which we normally say. We call it the soft skills and the hard skills. Obviously, the hard skills are technology related, your work related, your software skills if you're an IT professional. While the soft skills are business ethics, how to get along with colleagues, listening skills, engaging in conversation, interpersonal skills, and all those skills we have. Right. Next slide. So soft skills which will be in demand in future, as what Sir Abhay sir said, that these are interpersonal communication skills. So these are things which schools try to teach you, but a lot of universities are trying to build modules to teach that. Teamwork is a very important factor. Initiative is coming up in a lot of things these days. Ambition, very important again. Creativity, leadership. So these are new skills which you have in demand, and these are things which were there earlier but were not very focused. But I think seeing the trends in future, these are things which will be required. Next slide, please. Quickly run through so that you don't we don't waste a lot of time on that. Prabhakar ji, next slide. Yes. So if you go to business readiness, like there are things we have to mix. Like what is the need? What is the need of all these skills? The need is ultimately to get a job, to build your future, and therefore we need these skills. So business ethics are very important. You go to internships. A lot of universities are offering. A lot of schools are started offering. A lot of universities abroad and even Indian institutes are offering under the new NEP, new education policy 2020. Also, internships has been built as part of it. Social media presence, very important these days. A lot of students are glued to Facebook, Instagram. This is the future. So if universities are looking for students, these are the new things they have to do. Passion, enthusiasm, these are skills which will be needed in future. I just give you the next slide is just a figure of what McKinsey has given a report which says that the top skills which top mix of populations which will be in demand in the near future will be healthcare workers, STEM people, which is science, technology, engineering, maths, health professionals, managers, business, legal, and they've given a lot of data on based on country also, which is there, but I'll not speak about that. Next slide. So these are the top 20 job roles in increasing and decreasing demand by 2020. This is as per the report of World Economic Forum. So if you see the top jobs are obviously of data analytics, AI, artificial intelligence, big data, digital marketing, and project management, strategic advisors, management roles, and all. And some jobs are decreasing, which will decrease, and you can't say. But this will give you a context of what skills we are requiring in future. Next slide. So if you see the next slides again, World Economic Forum report, creative thinking is an important skill, problem solving, self-management will come into picture, analytical skills, clear learning strategies, problem solving. So some of the skills which I thought I should highlight, these are slides which are there. So when we go to the how the student is developing all these skills, next slide. So there are two ways you can stretch yourself. So how do we get these soft and hard skills? Next slide. So there are two ways of pushing yourself. You push your skills and attitudes, and you go to the depth of learning also. So you push yourself both sides, top level, down level, every level. And graduates of the future, next slide, will have a deep knowledge of the product or the knowledge of the subject. For example, if it is medical sciences, a thorough knowledge of product. If they are engineers, a thorough knowledge. Personal and professional practice also, and professional global citizens also should be there in future. These are the future graduates which will evolve over the period of time. And what we can do as an organization, as a university, as a institution, as universities. Next slide. We can grow awareness at workplaces for all these skills which are required. Explore students to ask to explore more areas of interest. Part-time work, volunteering work is important. If you apply to US universities, a lot of other universities, you need volunteering work, like social and NGO organizations also. Internships, which I just touched also. And travel study tools, which will help in building, and a lot of these things are being already built. So I think this is the slides. So I'll give it back to Abhay to take it further.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pankaj ji. In fact, we have very wisely delineated the combination of soft and hard skills which every individual should have. What are the basic occupation connects one can have in future, and how to go about creating an awareness about these things in the times to come when the new world order emanates. Now, I will move on to Professor Udani, who is the Director General of CVM University. Professor Udani, it is said that it is a VUCA world. That means, as termed by Warren Bennis and Bert Nanas, it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now, we have to understand the psychologic and develop empathetic behavior, that it must be concerned with humans and their needs. Yet we say that technology has disrupted the entire setup right now, whether it is education or anything else. So what is your opinion, sir? How could we balance technology as well as cater to the human and individual needs of the people with us, the stakeholders?
Okay, let me introduce myself first for 20-30 seconds. I worked at ISRO for 3 decades, and the vision of Vikram Sarabhai was to develop technology and then put technology to the application. That is the big differentiator between ISRO, NASA, European Space Agency, Japan Space Agencies, and the space agency across the world. So simply developing technology is not enough. Technology are to be put to the practice for a human service or a societal service. So that is the motto for 3 decades we have learned. Now coming to the education sector, and already Pankaj told about what are the type of skills required. I'll add 2 more skills. Definitely domain skills is required because there are many trades and many subsectors within each trades, but definitely domain knowledge is required. If somebody is to be recruited in a manufacturing company, he may be having all other skills, soft skills, he is very smart, but if he does not know how to design a machine or how to design a satellite receiver if he is electronic engineer, or how to design information system if he is IT engineer, then probably there is no picker for him. So domain skill, I will give 70% weightage to the domain skill. If you have done good research and development, product planning is very good, and there is acceptability. It's not arrogance, but ISRO has never done any kind of a marketing exercise. If your products are good, services are good, you don't have to think about business. Apple do not think about business. People are ready to buy iPhone, and they are waiting in a queue for midnight also. So domain expertise is first thing, research and development definitely, and then periphery, yes, definitely business skills are required, data science skills are required, and soft skills are also required as of today, because now you are working across a generation. Sometimes you are working with young generation also, sometimes you are working with elderly people also. They have a different background, different qualification, different expertise, and the way you can work in a close corridor in a physical presence is little easier task. But now due to pandemic and the kind of situation will unfold, definitely we have to prepare ourselves to work in heterogeneity, respect each other's opinion, and then move forward. But again, I'm repeating, domain knowledge definitely will score 70%, and rest 30% I'll give data science and then business skills, decision making, problem solving, whatever talked about, and then soft skill. So this is my input. Without a hardcore domain skill, a technological supremacy, you don't have to, you cannot succeed. Not possible at all. A good doctor, if his surgery skills are not good, he may do a lot of marketing for his hospital, but no patient will turn up. So your expertise has to be there. That is first thing. And if you permit me to elaborate a little more, say whenever you impart a skill, whether a technical skill or a business skill or a data skill or a soft skill, first of all, we have to design a syllabus or curriculum. Then we have to design a pedagogy, how teaching learning process will happen. Then we have to go for assessment, and rest of the things will follow in the place. Whatever 7-8 years experience I have in academics, the academics I joined in 2013. Curriculum, yes, we may not claim that our curriculum is a world class, but still you can adopt what are the good practices in a Mauritius University, Leadership Institute in Mauritius, what is happening in Singapore, what Singapore model, what is the Germany model. You can look at the literature, content is available, click away, and you can design your curriculum. Once curriculum is designed, then how to deliver? Previously, there was a problem because faculty is not up to the mark, talent shortage is there. But as of today, now blended learning, we are doing since last 18 months, and it will now continue. Even after normalcy, the teaching learning process will happen in this mode only. Physically, everything will not happen. If I have to invite an industry expert, and if he has designed a 1 unit, I can always invite him. He will deliver 1 unit. Faculty is not required. If I require a synchronous or asynchronous learning, online learning is both mode. It can be synchronous also, it can be asynchronous also, and that is also permitted. So you don't feel that, okay, we have no resources, there is scarcity of resources, faculty is not available. Today everything is available. So curriculum also we are comfortable zone. Teaching learning process also we are comfortable zone. But what I have seen in last 7 years in academic, we are very poor in assessment. Very poor in assessment. Whether it is assessment of faculty, assessment of student, research assessment. I give you one example. If somebody is preparing for a JEE examination or a NEET examination, toughest examination India conducts across the world. There is no any tough examination than IIT JEE or any examination tough compared to the medical examination. Let me give you example of physics paper. 11th and 12th standard syllabus is to be taught. The faculty may take 100 hours for 11th standard and 100 hours for 12th standard. So his contribution in teaching learning process is 200 hours. But what is done by the student? Minimum 1,000 hours students will be spending in preparation. Are we following something like this in higher education? School education was simpler. Students are not required to design any product or any service. Whatever curriculum is prepared by the agencies, he has to understand the curriculum, and then whatever understanding he has developed, he has to demonstrate, either in a MCQ type of test or a written test. So everybody knows, all are learned in education, and everybody has passed through JEE also. Our students who are entering in an engineering stream or a science stream, most of them have gone through JEE examination. They have failed. Ho sakta hai, but they have prepared. Same thing is true for medical examination also. So I think my first prescription for a higher education institute would be, we are spending a lot of time. That is not the right model of teaching also. Any skill, curriculum is to be developed, teaching learning process is to be decided, then comes assessment. We need to spend only 20% of time in teaching. 10 times, 5 times more time students should spend in learning the subject. That is the JEE model. That is the NEET model. Other way we are doing. Students are simply appearing for the examination, looking at the PPT in most of the colleges, or maybe whatever the 200, 300 lectures note or course note prepared by the faculty distributed to the student. They are preparing 3-4 days and they are appearing for the examination. I have seen closely, because we have Ayurveda college also, we have medical colleges also. So I have seen closely, even in post-graduation studies, somebody has joined orthopedic discipline or any other surgery or medicine discipline in a hospital, MD or MS, he has to work for 72 hours for emergency, 72 hours. So this is the kind of dedication from a teacher student community. We are dedicated. Vice chancellors are doing job, faculty also doing job, all facilities provided to the student, but today's student, they are not spending enough time in grasping the content of the subject. So we have to rethink our teaching learning process. We need to spend less time. 100 hours is good enough if faculty is spending. But if faculty is spending 100 hours, what we are expecting from the student? He has to spend at least 500 hours and maybe 1,000 hours also. Then only he can sharpen his skill and understand the subject thoroughly well. So continuous engagement of a student in teaching learning process so that his attention is not diverted, and reports are there. This young generation is spending a lot of time in social media. If we keep them busy, okay, have a hackathon continuously. Just yesterday, I concluded a hackathon in our institution. It was 72 hours hackathon. And repeatedly, we are doing something like this. Keep them busy. So they are not touching mobile phone also, not involved in social media, continuously in teaching learning process. So that is the first prescription. All educational leaders, leadership, faculty must convey a strong message to the student community. The employability is a question. Everybody is not getting a job. The reports are there. Recently published report of a VBox and CII from 2015 to 2021, in span of 5-6 years, employability percentage of engineering discipline has gone down by 7 to 10%. 2015 it was some percent. Today it has gone down. Management program also it has gone down. So why it has happened? Main reason is industry are complaining, we have opportunity, we want to expand our factories, we want to expand our production, but we are not getting a talent pool. So unless and until we are tasking student for a rigorous teaching learning and rigorous assessment, if you have not done good curriculum design, yes, it is acceptable. Somewhere you have flawed in a teaching learning process, that is also acceptable. But our assessment should be very, very tough. Unless and until we improve our assessment, things will not improve. In any public sector recruitment today, ISRO examination definitely was very tough because we were part of the other side, and our examination, entry-level examination, ISRO was very tough. Even recruitment is happening in a public sector, just like chemical industries, IOCs, petroleum industries, fertilizer industries. What they are doing? First of all, they will ask, what is your GATE score? Now, GATE score is not asking for a soft skill. GATE score is not asking for business skill. It is asking for a thorough understanding of a subject. So unless and until your score is 70, you are not even accepted for the interview process. Yes, in a corporate world, today India has dominated in IT sector. 4 million jobs have been provided by IT sector, indirectly another 10 million. And we are growing at a faster rate. There is no second doubt about it. Recently, in last 15 days, I heard somewhere or read somewhere, 4 our giant companies, TCS, Wipro, HCL, Infosys, they themselves are going to recruit 1 lakh plus. So jobs are there, but today in the Indian context, we are not South Korea, Japan, or USA, or China. We are not a manufacturing country. Our manufacturing contribution to the GDP is stagnated. It is hardly at 14-15% since last 10 years. But our contribution in service sector is growing. And major service sector is IT, definitely. Indian talent is recognized across the world in IT sector. Our products and services are acceptable across the world. Another sector which has got good recognition is the pharma sector. And now, say, whenever you design any program, first of all, institution has to design a program. How you design a program? What is the requirement of a country? That is, we have to think. And what is the requirement of a local industries? We are located in Gujarat. CVM University located in Gujarat. We have a 30 institutions. Most of them are NEC accredited A grade. Engineering programs are NB accredited. So IT is in boom. So definitely we have a program in BTech or B in computer science, PG program also in computer science, MC, MSc IT also we are running. But Gujarat is leading in a chemical, petrochemical, agrochemical, specialty chemical, machinery, food processing. So we have planned our programs to meet the local requirement. Right from wherever I am sitting in a stretch of 200 kilometers, we have plenty organizations producing petrochemicals products, agrochemical products. So we have created a thematic institutions. Let me give one example. iStar is a thematic institute catering to the requirement of chemical industry only. We have another thematic institute also catering to the requirement of renewable energy, catering to the requirement of food processing. But if I give you a message regarding the iStar, in 20 NIRF ranking, iStar was placed 126 position in an NIRF ranking. And recently, in a Gujarat ranking in college category, the institution has figured as number 1. What kind of programs we are conducting? We have a...
Yes, Professor Udani, I agree with you, sir. Sir, I agree with you. I'll come back to you again. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I have full regards for ISRO. We hold ISRO in very high stead. And I must say that whatever you've said regarding domain knowledge is, of course, very important for all of us, that the student should have a perfect domain knowledge before thinking of going in for skilling in other areas. And this is how the difference between an educational institution and a corporate world exists. We have to have a close linkage. The assessment process, as you said, should be of the highest order. So I fully agree with you, sir. Now I think I would move over to Dr. Sendil Kumar. Dr. Sendil Kumar is the Dean and Director, Health Sciences, Vinayaka Missions Research Foundation, deemed to be university. Dr. Sendil Kumar, I have another query in mind, which I would like to pose before you. Sir, we always talk about skilling the students. They should have hard skills, soft skills. But what about our teachers? What about, say, other stakeholders, the leadership in the institutions? How should we have new skills inculcated and imbibed within the faculty members? What changes should we have in our mindset? These would be akin to having new skills, because if a new world order is to develop, then every stakeholder has to change himself or herself. So, sir, have your views on that, please.
Good evening, one and all present here. Thank you, sir. It's a good question, actually. Like, you asked about, like, the VUCA world, like a volatile and uncertain and complex and ambiguous world, how we are coping up with this higher education institutions. It's a good question, because, suddenly we started with the classrooms, like, kind of online classes through communicating with the students through Zoom or WebEx or any platforms, like we have started using it. It's very quite difficult for the faculties also to cope up with this kind of change of environment. It's a quite bit challenging, but that is what, like, we need to have the skill sets in early stages itself. Like, you have 3 sets of skills. One is the cognitive and metacognitive skills. And second one is the social and emotional skills, and the third one is the practical and physical skills. The 3 skills you should have always. And this cognitive and metacognitive skill, the student, everyone should have it in the early stages of learning. That is probably like in the school level. And social and emotional skills, everyone should carry out throughout our career. And third one is the practical and physical skills. You talk about the faculties, how the faculties are coping up with this challenging environment during this COVID-19 pandemic. So I would like to mention about a few examples about the institution. Like, now the University Grants Commission come up with some plans, like, we need to do a faculty induction program every year to do kind of upgradation of the knowledge of the faculty. So they have made this a mandatory for the universities deemed to be universities, state universities, private universities, to conduct the faculty induction programs for the faculties in terms of teaching learning process, in terms of upgradation of the knowledge, in terms of, like, updating their technical skills, and updating of new skill sets is available in the market, something like they need to go cope up. As an higher officials, like the management should take also come up with some plans for this to do this. So we have started doing the faculty induction program for the faculties as well, like rightly said by the the thing is that we need to have practical skills also for the students. Like for an example, industries should come up we need to have a kind of industry and academia tie up with the industry academia collaborative program should come up with in a good shape, because being health sciences university, we need to have a industry academia collaborations to improve the technical skills of the students. For an example, by this NAC accreditation process, during this accreditation process, the criteria says we need to have an industry specific program, industry design program, industry offer program, industry internship program, like that. We need to conduct. So obviously the management as well as the faculty members to find out what are the industries are available in the market, to train the students. For an example, I can give you some example for the radiography and cardiothoracic students and cardiology students or something, like where the Siemens Healthineers is coming out with some platform. It's called a blended learning, where offline and online is both the modes are taking classroom sessions and even the practical sessions also. Like the students can come up with the good hands-on skill, what the industry expects after the completion of the program. For an example, for an ophthalmology or optometry, the Lawrence Mayo and Bausch and Lomb, they're coming up with like a dispensing of optics or contact lens usages, all those things the conducted with the industries. So once the students completes, the industry is totally different. What they're learning in college and what the industry expects is totally different. So we need to make them understand what exactly the industry looks and what the industry expects from the students. So we need to connect the students with the technical skills in industry academic collaborations. So probably we need to initiate the process in the management level itself, to have a lot of industry connects and faculty induction program related to upgradation of the knowledge. Not only in the institution level, probably we need to conduct in a national level. Probably even the faculties also get benefit out of this.
Thank you, Dr. Sindhil Kumar. It has been something very nice you talked about industry academia connect, because that is of utmost importance. If the students have to have certain skills, because as I always say during most of the webinars which I am present in, that the students have to continuously upgrade and upskill themselves throughout the career. It is not that if Professor Abhay Kumar had done his MBA way back in 1980 with specialization in marketing, that would not suffice for the students. He has to delve into deeper specializations within the marketing area and continuously upskill in those areas in the times to come. Well, I would move on to Mr. Pankaj Jain now, because I would like to ask you, Pankaj, you are a stalwart in terms of international education of students and how admissions are done and what basic skills the students need if they want to study internationally. Some people told me that international admissions are dwindling. On the other hand, I feel that post-pandemic, it's not actually post-pandemic, but since things have calmed down a bit, there is a beeline for international admissions as of now. This is what I'm finding. So what special skills do you think, for example, UTS College, Sydney, Australia, where you are working for determined working there. So what are the basics do you think these would be offering the Indian students, whether it is Australia, UK, Canada, whichever country it may be?
Thank you, sir. Besar. I think, as you correctly said, there is a beeline for students to go abroad also. Before the pandemic, also students are going. The increase rate is 10 to 15%. US has grown drastically this year, followed by Canada, followed by UK, and Australia has been slow in the sense because our borders are closed. So students are still studying online. When you go to skills part of it, the majority of the skills which a lot of these foreign international universities look at, they judge you by the statement of purpose which you supply during admissions. So your statement of purpose will carry what is your family background, what you have done, what extracurriculars you have done. Have you done some internship with the NGO firm? Have you done any internship with the corporate world? Have you done any extra course in UK or US or Canada or Australia? These are like 1 week, 2 week short courses. These days, a lot of students are doing courses on Coursera, Udemy, Univerity, LinkedIn courses also, which are free, and some are charged also. So these are small skills, I think, which will add to the qualification. And the second part we have to look at is when students, a lot of students, when we apply, they ask for scholarships. So, but what the students have to be told and be clear that when you look for scholarship, I have to be the best among the group of applications. If there are, let's say, 1:20 is the ratio for application screening at any college or across the world or the university, then what is the great skill which I have in one application out of 20 that they will select me? So, therefore, all these things come into the play that time. Whether you have worked with an NGO, what internship have you done? Have you done any extracurricular certificates? Did you do any learning exercise on your own besides academic? Because academic, you get student like this year. Obviously, if you have seen the 12 boards, there were so many toppers, 70, 80,000 of 95% plus, which have grown last year. Also, numbers have grown for last year. So, how does a college or a university like your university or Professor Udani's university differentiate between students? So, there's no way. So, either you have an interview of a student, or you judge on the basis of extracurricular certificates, sports certificates, and other things, or you take an interview and the statement of purpose, or extra certificates like his English skills, English exams. And therefore, the foreign universities are in a dilemma because we are getting very good students from India. Earlier, the trend was rich students would only go, but recently the trend has increased that people with good academic standards are also going, and they obviously apply for scholarships. So these things does matter at that stage. And at our college, at our university, UTS University, University of Technology Sydney also, we value the statement of purpose which the student provides. And this is part of the visa process also. Even the Australian High Commission also looks at the statement of purpose very in great details. So I think these are skills which I think we will request students to use it during 11th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th itself. They should develop. Even at bachelor's level, they should develop. If you see, like in the last 6 months, I've been hearing of lot of IT companies offering courses in data analytics 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 5 week, and a lot of students are taking. So these are companies I've spoken to them, and they are preparing our graduates who are in 3rd year, 4th year of engineering or other courses to get ready for the industry. So I think therefore we have to adjust and see what is in demand. As sir said, that we have to see industry curriculum also, we have to see academy also. So both have to be involved, and therefore the skill set has to be enhanced by students. Over to you,
Yes,
sir.
thank you, Pankaj. You said you've given us a wonderful briefing on how skills are to be empaneled when somebody thinks of an international admission, and what are the requirements there, and how and why Indian students must think in those terms. Well, we are joined now by Dr. Balakrishna Shetty, who is the Vice Chancellor of Shri Siddharth University, Tumkur. Sir, we have been together in a few webinars earlier also, and I had the opportunity of listening to you. So when we are talking about, say, new skills in a new world order, I would just think of asking you, sir, in terms of, say, health sector, whether it is medical, whether it is paramedical, what do you think are the basic new skills in a evolving healthcare new order? What would you think now that the evolution of the healthcare sector is at a very fast pace now? So what do you think the new skills should be acquired by various stakeholders?
Yes, hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible, sir.
Okay. So as far the health sector is concerned, of course, I'm a doctor as well as a radiologist. And a radiologist means basically it is a technology, because we deal with so many machines, so many X-ray, ultrasound, CT scan, MRI, all those equipment. We deal with all these equipments. As far the technology is considered, first of all, let us say new world means initially we need to clear off the apprehension what is there with the students as well as the faculty members as well as the technologists concerned, because let us say we'll take about the issue of artificial intelligence. The moment we talk about artificial intelligence, we are all scared. Faculty are scared. Radiologists are scared whether the radiologist will lose a job or the faculty will think they'll lose a job. All such apprehensions are there. First of all, I would like to say, as far as the new technology is considered, first of all, we should remove the apprehension in the faculty members as well as the students. That is the first and foremost important criteria. We need to say, because when we said the computers came, we thought computers will take our jobs, but the computers are there and we are using the computers so that we'll grow up in your job. Similarly, artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, all these paraphernalia, all these things will help you to grow in the field. That is the first point I would like to emphasize. Now, new technology, as far as a medical concern is concerned, in the human body, I would like to say it has not changed at all over a period of years. So that is the same. Human diseases are the same, but only thing is the disease, the vectors, the agents which cause pain, which cause a disease are totally different. For example, we are looking at a lot of virus infections, the COVID infection, the Nipah virus, that virus, this virus. The viruses are killing. Of course, we had a computers, and then even in the computers, the viruses were the problem. Similarly, as far as the new technology is considered, we need to worry about the virus infections, because we controlled so many diseases. We controlled the bacterial diseases, we controlled other diseases. The most important diseases which are affecting us are viral diseases. So the new technology is, I would like to say, the new technology will be to improve or enhance our immunity or enhance our strength to fight all these diseases. That is very, very important. So for that, in our medical education, so we are a medical education academia, in curriculum, everything we are adding the basic technology or basic methodology to increase the immunity of the particular individual or the patient. That is the most important thing. Now, then comes new era, the technology, that is digitalization of healthcare. Okay, the moment a patient enters enters a clinic, initially we thought it is only talking to the patient and finding out disease and treating. Then we thought it is not just talking to the patient. We thought you should see the each and every inner part of the human body, like we do CT scan, MRI, and see a brain, kidney, everything, two things. Now, what is a new technology today is molecular imaging. That means the tracking of the DNA of each and every person. So the DNA tracking, that is called molecular imaging. We want to image the DNA of each and every patient and find out before the disease comes. We would like to know whether he's prone for diabetes, whether he's prone for various other diseases. So DNA tracing and molecular imaging and the tracing of the genetic pattern of a particular patient is going to be the most important modern technology as far as healthcare is considered. Okay, for DNA tracing, we will have now so many protocols, so many technology will come. DNA tracing not only will help us in preventing diseases, but also help us in preventing aging. So I would like to say the modern technology in healthcare will be genetic mapping or DNA tracing. Thank you, Abhay.
Thank you, Professor Bala Shetty, sir. It has been a great learning, because being a non-medical man, understanding how immunity is to develop and how biogenetics is to be evolved. So there's so many things which you have said, and maybe in another interaction, I would learn more from you. As of now, I think we would move over to Professor Udani for a swift 2 minutes, sir. 2 minutes each we'll be giving now that the time is coming up to us. Okay. Sir, tell me one thing. Just a query which arose in my mind right now. We are always talking about technology. We are always talking about skills which has to be given to someone, imparted to the student, faculty, whatever it may be. But then when we tend to think that we have worked remotely till now, we have been inducting new entrants into the various organizations. Don't you think that organizational culture has been affected due to this? How to build an organizational culture and a climate within the organization so that it does not hamper work in the future as well? Sir, please.
Say, if you are meeting at the end of the day, or maybe during a functions which is frequently organized in university and colleges, definitely you have a great bonding, and a lot of physical activities are happening, so that you are inviting industry people, you are inviting a faculty from other reputed institutions. So definitely the kind of bonding you can have when you are in a close proximity, there is no comparison, because online education is a two-dimensional education, and my aura or your aura cannot pass through digital pipeline, is not possible, and it will not succeed also. Online education can be supplementary, it cannot succeed. Teacher cannot be removed. So the way teacher can influence to do more, to learn more, dream more, and becoming more, that kind of message, I think, in a physical presence only can be passed on to the student. And without a social gathering, sitting in your own room, and then all digital business happening across the world, anyway, time being, there is no solution, so there is no way out. But this will not continue. This will not continue. That is, we have seen, apart from academics also, a slight relaxation given, and people have moved to the hill station in the country. They flood all the hotels and restaurants. So they will come to the institutions. And we have also started we are allowing students to enter. So most of our programs are engineering program and chemical programs. Laboratory cannot be conducted in offline mode. As I said, we are catering to the requirement of chemical industries in a big way. Reliance is depending upon us, Lupin is depending upon us, Asian Paint. We are thematic institute. And the way work can be done under the supervision of your teacher, supervision of your principal, supervision of a vice chancellor, the wisdom of the management team, that kind of aura in a two-dimensional online learning cannot happen. That you cannot pass through digital pipe. Not possible at all. But we do not have
Thank you,
substitute.
Professor Dami. Yeah. Thank you, sir, for being so honest and candid, because we all in our hearts of hearts know that the pandemic has affected online teaching, of course, has affected personal bonding. And of course, even the 268-year-long Harvard University survey research on more than about 270 undergrads has proven in the past 4 decades that the relationship is the most important factor which makes anyone happy. So those relationships have to be rebuilt. We have to recreate it in another form, if not possible, person to person. There has been many ways, and I think conclaves, webinars, and symposiums have brought each other quite together. I have come to know Mr. Pankaj, Dr. Bala, since we have been in so many webinars, and I feel quite affiliated towards each other now, without even having met. I think when we meet, it will be a wonderful experience altogether again. So, Dr. Sendil Kumar, sir, I would just give you another 2-3 minutes because we are just running short of time now. So I would pose one very straight and direct question at you, sir. You are also from health sciences. Okay, health sciences is a very broad subject. I'm not talking about medical, or I'm not talking about Ayurveda or anything else. What role would health sciences play in rebuilding nations which have been disrupted technologically? The economic disruption has happened. Then empathy part. Everyone had gone in a comfort zone till Make in India strategy was given. We didn't have any ventilators manufactured here. We didn't have any PP kits being manufactured at one point of time. Suddenly things boomed, and we have everything now with us. We are self-sufficient in many ways, even helping other countries with vaccines. So, sir, what is your viewpoint on this?
Yeah, thank you. Being a health sciences stream, actually, during this COVID-19 pandemic, I think Dr. Bala also there, from being a radiologist, the importance of healthcare professionals here. Still in India, we have acute shortage of health professionals in treating the people, actually speaking. And during this COVID-19 pandemic second wave, you can say there are so much shortage of oxygen. Now, by the circular from the National Medical Commission and from the Government of India, all the medical colleges and all the medical hospitals having above 100 better hospitals should have oxygen generators on their own. So everybody started generating the oxygen on their own. So maybe if a next wave comes, like we are mentally prepared to have oxygen generators in all the hospitals, and healthcare professionals, I think all like medical or paramedical professionals, very very strong enough to handle these cases, the way they handle the cases in first wave, really fantastic, because you won't believe, there is no vaccination. We don't know about what exactly the virus will do for us, and by the time itself, everybody reacted very quickly, and they are able to manage well because of the skills what they learned during their academics in their colleges. So they are able to manage well during the first wave. And now in the second wave, everybody is vaccinated. Probably by having confident by these 2 waves, probably in India, we can manage very well the upcoming waves also, probably and as you said, now actually we need to take care of the health, being health sciences, we need to take care of the this kind of uh, technical skills we need to impart in the curriculum itself, for an example, that we need to have some kind of value-added courses, or we need to have some kind of competency-based education. Competencies, we need to have a competencies in initial year itself, because of this NEP comes, national education policy comes, we need to have from the first year onwards. So we need to have a competencies, and we need to have assessment every year. Once the assessment and competencies developed by the candidate, probably we can move the candidate to the next year. Like that, we need to have a competency-based education compulsory, and the skills, already I mentioned, the cognitive or metacognitive skills, or what are the social emotional skills, we need to incorporate that into the curriculum in the mode of skill enhancement courses, with the UGC curriculum framework itself says. So we need to have a competency-based education in all professions. Probably we can come up in a good manner. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sendil Kumar. In fact, I also fully agree with you that competency-based education is the need of the day. Without competency-based education, I don't think we can sustain ourselves, even if you start growing. Now, Mr. Pankaj, you are a widely traveled individual. I know you very well. You have been to so many countries. You are still traveling abroad every day when I talk to you. So I just want to ask you 2 questions. One is, what is the basic difference in the skill sets you find between Indian students, teachers, and other stakeholders as compared to foreign lands? The second is, what sort of a new world order do you think is developing? Is it going to be a positive in the context of India or not?
Yes, thank you, sir. I think, sir, after traveling abroad, and I did my MBA also in UK from University of Leeds, I think the major difference what I found in students as well as teachers, students are more confident, they believe in themselves, and they are not spoon-fed in terms of things by parents and teachers. So over abroad, the teaching is more of concept based. You study the concept. You are not doing rectification what we do in India, or cramming what we call it. Like the engineering course, for example, we have 4 years, they have 3 years over there. I'm an engineer from Delhi Institute of Technology, which is NSUT. So we were just every semester we had 8 exams, so 8 into 8, 64 exams we had to give. Over there are still 4 exams, plus there are 2 practicals. So the studies are less, but they teach you concepts, and then it is a lot of works, research work, a lot of projects, a lot of group work to do, where you learn with a group and you develop knowledge and skills. Like I did MBA, so there was a lot of group teaching, which also happens in India. I'm not saying in MBA it doesn't happen. I did a course in IIM Ahmedabad, so a lot of group work was there also. The second part is, what is the new world order which will evolve is, people are becoming passionate in India. A lot of new courses are coming up. All the universities which are coming up, you have Plaksha University, you have Ashoka University, you have a lot of universities, your university also, Pratap University. A lot of universities are evolving, which were not there earlier. A lot of funding has come in. A lot of private people have put in funding. So new courses are coming up. So earlier students were only focusing on engineering, medicine, and 3-4 courses. But now people are going to sports, people are going to design, people are going to architecture, people are going to music. Yesterday I got a query for a music also, and I said there would be 20 universities offering in India, but if you go to UK, 50 will offer. If you go to Canada, 30 will offer. If you go to US, 100 will offer. So we are saying only 20 universities will offer in India. I said that is what it is, because who offers, and what will the student get a job after spending 10 lakh rupees in BA music? So these are things which are evolving. The new world order will be more passionate. People will parents are saying that, okay, you do whatever you want to do. We are ready to sponsor you. If they don't have money, they will take loans to go abroad. In India also, all the private universities are giving a lot of scholarships. During COVID times, a lot of universities have said that we will take care of your studentship if your parents were lost during the COVID time. So a lot of new things have evolved. People have become passionate. I would like to just conclude that today a good movie has released called Sheshnag by Siddharth Malhotra. And there's a very powerful dialogue during the Kargil conflict, which he says, "Dil mange more." So I think these are things which people are asking that give us more. It was a Pepsi dialogue, but it was used in the movie. So over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Pankaj ji. Thank you for giving us such a good input in terms of your experience, which you have been encountering in the past few years. Well, we had Dr. Bala with us very shortly, so I would just like to end the session with you, sir. We have just 2 minutes now left for the session. So just to ask you, just the same question which I asked Mr. Pankaj, I think I would pose before you, that healthcare workers and doctors have been corona warriors, and we all know how much they have been working in the past 1.5 years. Well, hats off to you all, sir, as doctors and as healthcare workers, nurses, everyone. But where do they fit in the new world order, sir? I would like to pose that question for 2-3 minutes.
As far as the viral infection is considered, first and foremost thing I would like to say is there is no medicine for viral infection. That is the first thing I would like to say. We experimented with the remdesivir and we said it is totally useless. And we spoke about flabby flu, so many medicines we said. And the only thing which worked is the passion. As you said, the empathy the doctors showed to the patient, that only worked. I would like to say the patients who admitted to the hospitals, they rarely recovered. But the patients who stayed at home recovered much more than the patients who admitted to the hospitals. So as far as the corona warriors are concerned, as far as the doctors' work is concerned, as you rightly said, it is more of sympathy and empathy which we can pass on to the patients. That is much more than the injections and so many things which you give to the patient as far as the viral infection is concerned. I would like to say there are so many other infections which we can treat very well, but the viral infection, we need to give a lot of confidence. So I would like to conclude my statement here. Maybe a patient, maybe a student, as a teacher or as a doctor, we need to do only two things. One is enhance their confidence. We need to enhance the confidence of the student. We need not tell them you are stupid, you are useless, and all such things, which I keep on telling in all my webinars. The most important thing we need to do, the enhancement of the confidence of the students. Number two, and none of the students should have the inferiority complex. Never feel you are inferior. Today, when we sold so much of access, you rightly said, to so many countries, we can donate so many things to the other countries also. We are not going to look east or west. We are going to do our best as much as possible. That is the most important message I would like to say. And always, all the universities wanted to have autonomy. And as Udani said and Senthil Kumar said, as far as the online teaching is considered, I would keep my fingers crossed because I do not know. I would like to say that time will decide whether the online courses have helped. There are so many research papers, I understand, but over a period of time, we will know. We don't know whether online classes have helped or not. There is no question about the teacher and student relationship. There is no question about physical teaching. There is no question about talk and chalk pattern of teaching. But the results of online, I am very happy that my student is released out of the 4 concrete halls of the schools and he's ready to do anything, whatever he wants. He will read anything he wants to know. He will get any certificate he wants to, Harvard, Stanford, whatever it is, he can give it to us and he should give credit for that. My student is autonomous now. I'm very happy about that. And whether it is useful or not, time is the factor. Thank you very much.
Professor Abhay Kumar,
Thank you,
if you
Dr.
can
Bala,
allow
for
me just
speaking.
one message from my side, last message.
Please, go ahead, sir. Just 1 minute, sir. Because
Just 1
short
minute.
of time.
Say, online education, I am not opposing, my views are misinterpreted. Say, physical education is required. 30% online can be permitted. And I see a great opportunity for Indian teachers, maybe school teacher or a college teacher. The IT is providing service across the world. Pharma is providing service across the world. Same way, Indian teachers, maybe school teacher or college teacher, university teachers, in online mode, 30% will be served across the world in near future. That is my forecast. So great future for all teaching community.
Thank you, Professor Udani. Thank you so much. I see that it has been a wonderful deliberation today. Dr. Bala expressing such forthright views, and you again have expressed a very candid viewpoint on your side. Of course, we all talk about blended learning and see the results. Let's see the results of the online mode. It has to come up to our own expectations. So it has been a wonderful session today. My sincere thanks to Mr. Pankaj Jain, Dr. Bala, Professor Udani, and Dr. Sendil Kumar. I would like to hand over the session and the platform to Mr. Rajneesh Dey from APEC. Sir, please help.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Abhay,
Thank
for
you.
organizing this meeting. Thank you for coordinating. Thank you, Abhay.
Thank you, Dr. Abhay, and thanks to all the panelists for a very insightful discussion. We are really grateful, and Dr. Abhay Kumar for moderating and conducting this session in a very interesting way. So with this panel discussion, we come to the conclusion of day 2 of the APAC, second APAC Global Education and Skills Conclave. While thanking all the panelists for their insightful discussion, I would also like to thank the partners who have associated with us for this program, including the government of Gujarat, the government of Telangana, the country partner Education in Ireland, Coursera, ViewSonic, PayU, Globus, FlipLearn, IIM Rohtak, Chitwara University, HVB Global, Government of Andhra Pradesh, Intercell, Government of Chhattisgarh, Government of Madhya Pradesh, Government of Uttarakhand, and TASK, without whose association conducting a program of this scale and magnitude would not have been possible. Thanking you all, and thanks to all the participants and delegates who watched day 2. We welcome you to the day 3 tomorrow, where we will focus more on the school education. The day 1 and day 2, the focus was on the higher education. Day 3, we will be focusing more on the school education part. So looking forward to see you there tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks to APAC News Network, Mr. Akash, Rajneesh ji, Utkarsh, everyone, and the entire team for the wonderful organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
all the panelists.
Thank you.